Over the past 100 years, Galbally men and women have been generous with their resources and their talents in the promotion of Gaelic games and culture. On the 30th of April 1905, the Irish Rapparees Club was affiliated with the GAA. The club was named after the famous Shane Barna, who had many years earlier carved his mark in the local area. However, as with many Gaelic football clubs in Tyrone at the time, the Rapparees were defunct within the space of 2 years. Ten years later, the Galbally McDermotts were established. Few details of the club are known, but it would appear that there was only a temporary flirtation with the association at that time. The area had to wait until 1931 when Galbally St Joseph's were affiliated with February of that year. Despite the club's relatively short existence, it appeared in 3 East Tyrone Junior Championship finals, but without success, having been beaten by Mourntown in 1934, Pomeroy 1935 and Washing Bay in 1942, prior to their conclusion in the same year. Here are the members of the 1934 committee. The construction of the GAA Hall in 1937, which is still in existence today, and until recent times made a massive contribution to the local area in its use for hosting cultural and community events. James Kelly of Glenburrisk was one of the builders who worked on the hall. The early years were not just restricted to the playing of Gaelic football, as in 1934 camogie was catered for, when St Bridget's Altmore were formed. Like the early football clubs, their existence was also short-lived, as they lasted only 4 years. Throughout the years of the association in the area, there have been a number of venues where games have been played. In the early years, games were played at Donnelly's Field in Galbally. The home at Millbrook Park also holds many fond memories. Corrigan's Field has been used in both the 1960s and the 80s, and like the other great venues past and present, provided a valuable asset for the hosting of Gaelic Games. By 1948, the St Joseph's Club had been extinct for 6 years. A world war had been and gone for almost 3 years. There was still a demand for playing and organising of competitive Gaelic games, and therefore it was decided that perhaps it was time for such desire to be captured, harnessed and stabilised within the ambit of the Gaelic Athletic Association. Players and committee members of the former St Joseph's Club assisted in the resurrection of a new team in the area. Their advices on the procedures involved were invaluable, and in the early part of 1949 a meeting was held in Galbally Parochial Hall to form a steering committee to establish a club. The first committee of Galbally Pearses was elected, with Father MacDonald president, Chairman Dan Mullen, Vice Chairman Dan Donnelly, Packy McKeown as Secretary, Kevin Toner Treasurer, and Working Committee including Pat McGlinchey, James Clark, Packy McAleer and Pat O'Hagan. The club was barely 5 years old when it won its first honours, the East Tyrone Junior League in 1954. Chairman of the East Tyrone District Board, Paddy Cullen, declared them 1954 league champions and congratulated them on their victory on the 12th of February 1955. Success continued when on the 7th of July 1956 the minor team found themselves in the Clark Cup final, having beaten Cookstown and Ballygawley on the way. The game was fixed for 8 p.m. in Colisland and Ardbow were their opponents. Despite the complaints about a square ball incident from Ardbow, Galbally were successful and a victory ceilidh was held in the GAA Hall where the trophy was presented by the great Iggy Jones. On the 29th of November 1956, work started on the site of the present-day pitch, an area which had been known locally as Connie Mann's Moss. Work continued throughout the winter, and on 12th of the 1st 1957, work was recorded as making good progress on the field, the total area of which was estimated to comprise 4 acres. In 1957 and 1958, there was a considerable amount of success in local tournaments, which no doubt was fine preparation for championship success in 1958. On the 5th of July 1958, Galbally overcame Colisland in the first round of the Junior Championship. This was the second time they had defeated the Fianna in competitive knockout games that year, already having caused what was described as a shock in the first round of the Fess Shield on the 16th of March 1958. Perhaps this was an early sign that the team were to be no flash in the pan. On the 7th of September 1958, Galbally faced Derry Lochan in the quarter-final of the championship and scored 110 on the day, which was enough to secure victory. Some 13 days later they played in the semi-final against Kaleeshall, where they won by 6 points on a scoreline of 1-5 to 0-2, with PB Kelly the goal scorer. The scene was set for the Pearses' first campaign final to be played at Pomeroy on the 26th of October 1958 at 2 o'clock against Cregan. Their hunger and experience bore through, and they ran out convincing winners on a scoreline of 3-3 to 0-2. A new era had begun. 1950s committee members. Galbally had played their way out of junior football and now had new facilities awaiting them with completion of Pearse Park and its eventual opening on the 13th of August 1961. There was a parade to the ground led by INF Band and Gannon, and representatives of the GAA and clergy were in attendance. Canon J. Mackle was invited to bless the field, and orations were given by Paddy McFlynn from the Ulster Council and John McQuaid on behalf of the County Board. The important business of football was next, and Tyrone played Derry in a challenge match, and Galbally Pearses played Moneymore, with both home teams emerging victorious. in 1962 when Galbally overcame Kinturk to win the Feis Shield. League success continued. They remained undefeated and were declared league champions. The club's promotion to the senior ranks, where their impact was both immediate and impressive. The following season, the year 1963, and the team associated with it was to create a legend. 26th of May 1963, Galbally defeated Stewartstown, the reigning county champions, in the first round at Coal Island on a scoreline of 3-5 to 0-2. They built on this impressive start by beating Carrickmore in the quarter-final at Pomeroy. Their toughest test was next to come, when they were drawn to play against neighbours and parish rivals Donaghmore in Dungannon on the 11th of August 1963. This was a close and low-scoring affair and typical of any parish derby, but Galbally eventually won through by the narrowest of margins on a scoreline of 0-6 to 5 points. The club was just 14 years old, and after a run of successes in recent years, they had just one game between them and the ultimate club honour in Tyrone, the Senior Championship. Omagh, on the 7th of September 1963, was the obstacle facing them. At that time, the St Enda's club contained many members of the Tyrone senior team. In the end, the wealth of talent and experience, coupled with injuries to key personnel, was too much for the Pearses to deal with, and Omagh won on a scoreline of 2-10 to 5 points. By the end of the 60s, the club was on the demise to such an extent that an extraordinary meeting was called on Monday the 20th of October 1969 for all parties interested in the future of the club to attend, together with a further crisis meeting on the 14th of March 1970 for all past and playing members. It would appear that such meetings did not act as a rallying call, and during 1970 Galbally failed to field during a number of league games. Indeed, during that year, out of 11 games played, they won 1 and drew 1. The club had some success with neighbours Donaghmore and the combined Pearse team winning the Clark Cup. In 1971, an increasingly worrying political situation at the time and the introduction of internment was cause for concern for the club and its members. A charity game in aid of the internees' dependent fund was organised. The game was played between the old Crocs and the present team, which significantly was won by the veterans. And Galbally also won the Junior League in 1971. '74 1974 was significant for the ladies of St Dimphna's Camogie team, as this the year in which they reformed. In 1975, their quality was recognised when Vera and Noreen Boyle were selected onto the county panel. 1977 was to prove much more successful. They won a first-round championship, beating Brackerville by a point on the 21st of May 1977, only to be beaten by Killyclogher in the next round on a scoreline of 4-4 to 2-5. Their league campaign was much more successful, and they were unbeaten throughout, playing 12 games, winning 11, drawing 1, and points 23. As a result, they were promoted and were presented with medals at a function in Altmore Hotel on the 7th of January 1978. One of the most significant movements made by the club came at the end of the 70s, when Danny Kerr started an under-14 team in 1979. This was the start of a Galbally youth policy which has continued uninterrupted to the present day. He was joined in management the following year by Patrick McGeary, and the new youth policy began to bear fruit when the under-14 team won their league section, but were eventually beaten by Dungannon in the East Tyrone League final. An under-16 team soon developed, and this was taken over by Danny Kerr and Patrick McGeary, with Mickey McCahey and Sean McMahon taking charge of the under-14s, who found success and topped their league section, winning 5 out of 5. On the 13th of July 1981, Martin Hurston, an honorary member of the club, died after 46 days on hunger strike. To this day, the club continues to help promote his memory with the hosting of an annual football tournament in his honour. The under-16 team made further strides in 1983 when, under the guidance of Danny Kerr, Patrick McGeary and Michael O'Hagan, they lost the league final to Culleland by a point, but they won the Grade 2 championship after beating Trillock on an impressive scoreline of 6-6 to 2-3. The club was on the upturn, and the significance of a youth policy was beginning to pay dividends. "1985 witnessed the start of the fund run, with the proceeds split equally between Galbally Pearses and a nominated charity. In 1986, the minor team had success, winning the under-18 league section, beating Ballygawley in the final, and the senior team were managed by Pat Talley and Michael O'Hagan. This was the year in which the previously successful youth teams would graduate and Galbally would drag themselves out of junior football with a vow not to return. Every effort was made on league and championship fronts. There was an all-out attack to gain promotion. Owen Rose were defeated by 11 points in the first round of the championship, but a draw was all Galbally could achieve in the second round against Greencastle at Pomeroy, and were lucky to do so. With only 5 minutes to go and 3 points down, late points from Pat McKeown, Brian Donaghy and a last gasp free from Brian Quinn secured a 5-5 result. The replay was easier for Galbally, with Galbally running out worthy winners 113 to 1-5. Killyman were defeated in the semi-final. A flicked goal by Oliver Nugent from a Larry McVeigh 45 helped secure a 1-4 to 3 points half-time advantage. This was a lead Galbally refused to let slip. They emerged victorious on a score of 1-6 to 7 points. Galbally Pearses reached the 1986 Junior Championship final with 9 of their first team players under the age of 21. A fact that was both a cause of their success, but possibly caused their downfall in the final against Brocka. The final in Dungannon was played amidst the strong breeze which Galbally played with in the first half. However, despite leading by 5-3 at half-time, Brocka opened the second half with a goal and a point within the first 5 minutes. This was a lead they would never lose, and although they would score only a further 2 points due to a strong defensive performance, Galbally could not put scores on the board, mustering only 1 point in the final 30 minutes. Brocka won 1-6 to 6 points. It was Galbally's league performances that would bring them out of Division 3. They lost only 3 games in that season, and an eager and youthful team played until the 21st of December when they faced Drumquin in the league playoff at Omagh. A Plunkett Quinn hat-trick, a Larry McVeigh 45 and a Pat McKeown point were sufficient to gain victory and an early Christmas present for the club: promotion. Galbally were the first team from Division 3 to win a Division 2, Division 3 relegation playoff.
Here in Scotland, what's the free? Beat out by Lawrence McVeigh, Brian Kelly, out to Pat McKeown. McKeown roving now. McKeown. Pass finds no. Galway now under a bit of pressure. And this breaking ball. Great save by Patsy Murphy on the Galway goal. Powerful save by Patsy Murphy. But a poor kick out. Kicks it. And from the clearance. Galbally making a switch now. Number 16, Martin McCahey, about to come on. Eugene. Replacing Jared Gillespie on the Galbally team. That's a long, long ball by McVeigh.
The team had the county representation with Plunkett Quinn, Brian Quinn and Sean Quinn all featuring in the first round of the minor championship at Omagh against Derry, which ended in defeat. Brian Quinn scoring 4 out of Tyrone's 6-point tally. Pat McKeown would play for the county seniors, making his debut in no less an event than the Ulster final against Down. He would start the All-Ireland semi-finals in Croke Park on the day they beat Galway, and Tyrone would reach their first ever All-Ireland final.
Galbally have ever had a representative on the Tyrone senior team. What a moment for the young boy. There's changes, positional changes on the Tyrone team. I'll tell you about those in a few moments. But back with the play, and here come Down trying to pull back this lead. McCabe got a decisive touch. Plunkett Donaghy, what a fabulous game he's having for Tyrone. And here's the young man, Pat McKeown. His first touch of the ball. He'll be pleased with that. McManus and Pat McKeown. And McKeown won the battle. And the young Galbally man cleared it.
The club had finalised the improvement works to the field, and historically, the first stand opened on the 11th of June 1989 after being blessed by Father Patrick McGuckin and officially opened by County Board Chairman Tony McKenna. In 1990, the reserves won the Reserve Championship, beating Brocka, Fintona and Derry Loughlin on the way, before disposing of Berra in the final after a replay. Another dark hour would come to the club when a highly popular and talented footballer and member, Martin McCahey, was murdered at Loughgall. The death of Martin McCahey, a playing member with many of the senior teams at that time, and the further deaths of John Quinn, Dwayne O'Donnell, Malcolm Nugent and Thomas Armstrong at Kappa brought a community to its knees. The footballers decided that they would try to lift community spirits and in memory of their deceased friends, make every effort to win Intermediate League and Championship under management of Benny Hoy. In the league, Galbally won their first 10 games, including an away visit close to the Donegal border to take on Ahiaran. They would lose only one game in the campaign to Berra, but on that same day they were confirmed as league champions when nearest rivals Drumquin suffered defeat.
Let's see what he's going to do it. Brennan Long's the long ball looking down there for Jared Byrne, but once again it's the Galway cornerback, Larry Murphy, who comes out, clears his lines, way long up the centre again. Kieran McGarvey and Plunkett Quinn come out for it, it goes over both their heads. That's under the number 12 Plunkett Ridge, there's a break on here, Kevin Kelly's going through. He's on the 21, he's on the 14, he's going through. Left foot at the back of the net. Yes, great goal there by Kevin Kelly for Galway. Iron defence split there. And Kevin Kelly made no mistake there when he broke on that ball. Back of the net. Number 2 there, Larry Murphy for Escrow, or for Galway, he picks it up. And John's fouling there, I think. And referee Rees on the free out. And Larry Murphy didn't lick the tackle there. points. Back and play again, ball coming out this side. This time it's Peter O'Neill for Galway. Peter's right in his head and gets away from Stephen Moss, still coming slowing down, looking for the short ball, still going here, going to Stephen Moss chasing back. Stephen wants it back there for him. Once again, Peter O'Neill gets it back. Playing the short ball on the centre there. And Dahier in defence standing there, and Dahier's going to pay for this here. It's the ball forward, Puckett Quinn going through, kicking it left footed. Sean McGarrett can't save it, the ball's in the back of the net. And Dahier in defence stood looking at the Galway man coming through there.
After a final game against Ernie at home, the Intermediate League title was presented to team captain Pat McKeown. It was to be the start of celebrations, which was end up in Tally's Bar with Down's All-Ireland winning player Greg Blaney attending. In 1993, the Galbally Una Celts ladies team won the senior championship, beating Carrickmore in the final, and romped through the provincial campaign only to lose to St Eunan's Letterkenny in the Ulster Club final. Joe Cassidy won the first of a few inter-county All-Ireland honours to come to the club when he was involved in Tyrone's All-Ireland win in 1991. He evolved into the Tyrone senior team and was a regular between the posts during their 1994 campaign, which ended in defeat in the Ulster final.
He's got a second bite of the cherry. End off the crossbar. And well held. And that's a good test for Joe Cassidy. And he rose to it.
The dropping ball from Morrison didn't go all the way. Joe Cassidy recovered quickly, challenged in the square, a free out.
There's the corner forward. Manus Boyle. Declan Bonner. Here comes Tony Boyle. Turns, twists. Referee waves play on. That's good work again by McEneely. Oh, what a great save by Cassidy. He saw that very late. And a brilliant save.
Mark Crossan out in the middle of the field because Kieran Loughran is occupying a third midfield berth. But just before that, Tony Boyle in the square. Hands off. Referee said it was a slippy ground, and I'd be inclined to agree with him. Tony grabbed it, then Crossan. This bait shot just was going in at the post. Brilliant save by Joe Cassidy.
In 1997, the under-14 team under the guidance of Marty Donaghy, Noel Donaghy, Eamon McElroy and Shane Murphy steered their team to a Grade 2 league and championship double, beating favourites Kildress in the league final on a scoreline of 4-15 to 3-11, before disposing of Donaghmore in the championship final by 1-11 to 2-5. The team contained many of those who were to graduate to today's senior team, including Martin Brannigan, Ryan McGurk, Paul Rafferty, Kieran McCrory, as well as the late Michael McGeary. The senior team then followed suit, with a marvellous championship run, resulting in their first appearance in the Senior Championship final since 1963. A year in which any club would contest 4 county finals at various levels, inclusive of Senior Championship, will be one not to be forgotten. For Galbally Pearses, a club which had achieved limited success, the year that 1997 had already brought on the football front was wonderful. However, the deaths of Tyrone and Michael McGeary on the eve of what was hoped to be the club's finest hour brought tragedy of immense proportions to a community full of excitement and wondrous anticipation. Their sudden deaths sliced these emotions apart, leaving a family, a locality and wider GAA community wounded and lost 2 of its finest members. The Senior County Final, the club's first since 1963, that was fixed for the following day, Sunday the 14th of September 1997, was postponed for a week, but the interest in the final had gone. To the credit of the players and management, they fielded and tried wholeheartedly to compete. Having beaten Donegal in the first round, a bye in the quarter-final, and dismissing Omagh at Carrickmore on a scoreline of 2-7 to 10 points in the semi-final, the club's championship dream was shattered. It is but a statistic now that Galbally were defeated by Cairn in the Tyrone Senior Championship final on a scoreline of 1-14 to 2-5 on the 21st of September 1997 at Eden Dork. Galbally decided that it was time for a revamp of their own field at Pearse Park and set about fundraising for its redevelopment. The contract was undertaken by TJ McGee, and in the early part of 1998 work was underway to lay a new sand carpet field and an extension to the stand. The club celebrated its Golden Jubilee in 1999, its 50th birthday. A weekend of events in September would include the opening of the new field. The voluntary ethos and dedication of its founding members were clearly evident 5 decades later, when all available hands were on board to complete the new field, together with the original tricolour which was presented to the club on its formation in 1949 by Dan Kerr. Galbally's first game on the new field was against Ardbow, with the first point scored on the new field taken by the late Jerry Gillespie in the reserve game. The first goal scored was by Eamon McElroy in the senior game which followed, which capped a winning start. Galbally won the Jim Devlin Cup in 2000, beating Ahiaran in the final. All-Ireland Final Day 2001 saw the involvement of two club representatives in Paul Rafferty and Kieran McCrory in the minor final. Having already beaten Armagh, Derry and Monaghan en route to the provincial title, a further win over Mayo in the All-Ireland semi-final would set them up with the decider against the Dubs. A last-minute goal for the boys in blue resulted in a draw, but in the replay there was no doubt as to who the superior side were, as Tyrone captured victory by 2-11 to 6 points. The words of Peter Canavan on September 2003 will forever echo through the ears of the Gaels of Tyrone. There were no people more proud than the men and women of Galbally, as one of the greatest players of our time acknowledged the contribution made by Paddy Talley in training Tyrone's first ever senior All-Ireland winning team. The capture of the Sam Maguire was an unforgettable occasion, and the toasting of the victory continued in the homes, townlands, pubs and club of Galbally.
Paddy, for the rest of your life, you can now say you became the All-Ireland champions.
The cup had pride of place at the club's annual dinner dance that year and was ably accompanied by the late great Cormac McAnallen. On that night, Michael Murphy received the Youth Player of the Year award. Who would have thought that just 2 years later, Michael would have a senior All-Ireland medal of his own. In the 2004, after many fantastic league performances, the club were promoted back to the Division 1A under the guidance of former players Plunkett Quinn and Michael Donaghy. Galbally's first competitive game of the second century was against Dromore in Senior Division 1A of the Tyrone All-County League. Here are 4 Galbally men involved with Tyrone's 4 attempts at winning Senior All-Ireland glory. Pat McKeown 1986, Joe Cassidy 1995, Paddy Talley 1995 and 2003, Michael Murphy 2005. In the passing of a century, the promotion, organisation and enjoyment Gaelic games and culture in the Galbally area have never been stronger. Both senior and reserve teams play in the Senior League in Tyrone, and the development of the club's footballing talent continues through an organised and dedicated youth structure with teams competing from under 8 upwards. The ladies continue to play at senior and youth level at all ages under the umbrella of Una Celts, and our musicians provide further representation in the score competitions. All of this would be impossible without the contributions of the men and women of the area who continue to embrace the voluntary ethos of the GAA, just as those who supported the Rapparees, the McDermotts, the St Josephs, and those who dedicated and formed the Pearses and Galbally in 1949 in memory and in recognition of the spirit of Pearse. That spirit remains constant as we embark on the next 100.